I started a new job recently, and this job is forcing me to deal with death. Now, that's not altogether a bad thing since death is a part of life. So this new job, let me just say it for some context, which is Director of Pastoral Care at a senior living facility. Now, death is something that I've long avoided, mainly because of my heritage as a Kohen. It's a priest, basically, and it's part of the priestly class in Jewish life. And this class of Jews basically avoids death except for certain close relatives. Now, I have long avoided it and basically have gotten away with avoiding death and dead bodies and all that sort of thing. But my new job is forcing me to deal with it because people die at senior living facilities. That's part of that life. And so not only am I now dealing with funerals and burials and graves, which is a part of that job, which I've of course long avoided as a Kohen, as part of this priestly class, but also just generally if people die in the building and also dealing with mourners, how do I deal with them? Now look, 13 years ago in rabbinical school, we did do the dying, death, and mourning. We did all that curriculum, and I said, that's great. I'm going to stay far away from death. Now, this new job, however, is forcing me to deal with it. I actually was very ambivalent about starting this job because I did not want to deal with death. I wanted to stay far, far away from it, but got the job, started the job, and over the past couple of days, actually over the holiday of Shavuot, I spent a lot of time looking into, reading, studying, learning about the various parameters of avoiding death and corpses and all that, really the avoidance of that sort of death impurity, or death contamination, as it were, for those of us of the priesthood class. It was very fascinating, very insightful, and it was in two ways. One, it was really fascinating to see how for funerals and sort of cemeteries in general, how navigable it is, not only in terms of really basically trying to stay away from graves. I mean, there's a lot more intricacies, and then also with being in the building for my job, how I can still be in the building, but remaining a certain distance away from things and being concerned about how this contamination can go through buildings and different rooms. It's a really fascinating, intricate setup of all those things, but also being still at a remove from various corpses and yet guiding mourners through the process. So really fascinating for the last couple of days for me to dive in and learn both about specifically being a Kohen and trying to remain contamination free from this impurity, from death, but also beginning to learn about practically and really approaching death, because I know this is going to be fascinating. A couple of years ago, I went to my first ever funeral, and to this date, it's still been the only funeral I've attended, and hearing eulogies. Very strange because I remained at a remove, and so now I'm learning both ways in which it's both easier to be around death and yet at the same time navigating all that. So very fascinating times as I've begun to delve into death. There we go. Both as a Kohen specifically and also helping people guide them through the dying, death, and mourning process. So I've got a lot to both review from my notes from rabbinical school 13 years ago and also around the navigability for being a Kohen. So thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned with me on this journey.